The man who brainwashed the American people. In the 17th century, the Dutch depicted smoking as a symbol of human folly. The only women shown smoking in these paintings were either prostitutes or courtesans. In the 19th century, women who smoked were viewed as fallen women, as smoking was considered a professional symbol of prostitution. The matter went even further than that. In New York, at the end of 1908, a woman was arrested for smoking a cigarette in public places. And in 1921, a bill was proposed in the United States Congress to prohibit women from smoking in the District of Columbia. The situation got to the point that the New York Times published an interview with hotel managers calling for a ban on women smoking.
I hate to see women smoking. Aside from the moral aspect, they don't really know how to smoke. One woman smoking at a dinner table will produce more smoke than an entire table full of men smoking cigars. They seem to be smoking, not knowing what to do with the smoke, nor knowing how to hold their cigarettes properly. They create chaos in the entire performance.
But later on, the cigarette became a symbol of rebellious independence, allure, seduction, and sexual appeal for women. But how? To understand how this happened, we must look at this man, the man who brainwashed the American people. Edward Bernays, November 22nd, 1891 in Vienna, born into a Jewish family. This kid is the nephew of the psychologist Sigmund Freud. The year after his birth, the Bernays family moved to New York, and Bernays later graduated from Cornell with a degree in agriculture. But instead of farming, he chose a career in journalism, eventually helping the Woodrow Wilson administration promote the idea that U.S. efforts in World War I were intended to bring democracy to Europe, yet propaganda had acquired a somewhat pejorative connotation, which would be further magnified during World War II. So Bernays promoted the term public relations. Bernays acquired an impressive list of clients, ranging from manufacturers such as General Electric, Procter & Gamble, and the American Tobacco Company. In 1928, George Washington Hill, the president of the American Tobacco Company, realized the potential market that could be found in women and said, "If I can crack that market, it will be like opening new gold mine right in our front yard," he told Edward Bernays, which been hired to convince women how smoking cigarettes would land them a worthwhile victory in the fight for equality. Bernays was being paid $25 million to turn around the fortune of Lucky Strike, a ridiculously large sum. Bernays began to ponder how best to employ the theories which had already proven so effective in his public relations campaigns. Gustave Le Bon's principles of mass psychology, Wilfred Trotter's herd instinct theses, and above all, the hidden drives of human beings that Sigmund Freud, Bernays' uncle in Vienna, wrote. Bernays needed advice and consulted the psychiatrist Brill, who had been one of Freud's pupils. He asked Brill about the psychological basis for a woman's desire to smoke. "Cigarettes, which are equated with men," came the reply, "become torches of freedom." That was Bernays' inspiration, his campaign, to get young feminists to light up cigarettes, torches of freedom, in public as an act of emancipation during New York's Easter Parade. This, he believed, would make its way into the nation's newspapers. Edward Bernays set about designing the Torches of Freedom campaign, a PR stunt the first of its kind in the world. Before that, however, he still had to take care of a crucial issue: to give instructions to Bertha Hunt. She was Bernays' secretary, But at his behest, she was to forget that for a few days. She had to pass herself off as a women's rights advocate and drum up comrades in arms for the feminist Torches of Freedom campaign. No inference to American tobacco was to be permitted. March 31st, 1929, was the day Bernays had set aside for his campaign. He himself was not in attendance, but would later be informed of how a group of 10 young women, walking up and down Fifth Avenue, contentedly lit up cigarette after cigarette, while Bertha Hunt fulfilled her role professionally as the purported initiator of the campaign. When a reporter from the New York World approached Hunt to ask how she had arrived at the idea of a women's smoking march, she answered that she first got the idea for this campaign when a man with her in the street asked her to extinguish her cigarette as it embarrassed him. I talked it over with my friends, and we decided it was high time something was done about the situation. Bernays himself hid behind these women. Even in communicating and organizing with them, he always used other people as go-betweens. He knew that for the operation to succeed, the public must believe that it was a grassroots movement. So Easter parades all over the country had small delegations of convinced women marching for his cause. He had his people arrange publicity photos and press releases to accompany these marches, and the result was that hundreds of newspapers around America ran stories about how these industrious young women were marching for their rights to smoke cigarettes just like men. It sounds strange to give you this next statistic as a positive, but in 1923, only 5% of the cigarettes sold in the U.S. were smoked by women. After Torches of Freedom, that number shot up to 12%, then to 18% in the next 10 years, and just kept rising until the 1970s. This really opened a door for Lucky Strike to start advertising heavily toward women. They used ideas like promoting cigarettes as a form of weight loss. Instead of snacking, they would say, "Why not smoke a cigarette after dinner?" They promoted being skinny as a beauty standard and sold the idea that cigarettes were a way to achieve that beauty. Almost instantly, cigarette use by women shot up by 400%. The money paid to their propagandist was paying off. Year by year, more and more women began smoking, all the way up until smoking peaked in 1977. Not long after his opening up the world of smoking to American women, his client, American Tobacco, came to him with a new issue. It was 1934, and women smokers shunned their main product, Lucky Strike. At issue was the color of the green packaging of the cigarettes. They clashed with most fashions. Bernays suggested the obvious, repackage Luckies, but the client refused, insisting they had too much invested in green. So Bernays' mind went to work. If he could not change the wrapper, he had to change society and make green a fashionable color. He came up with an idea. One hell of an idea. He called it the Green Ball. Held at the new Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City, he pretext for the ball, and its unnamed underwriter was that proceeds would go to charity. Famous society women would attend wearing green dresses. Manufacturers and retailers of clothing and accessories were advised of the excitement growing around the color green. Intellectuals were enlisted to give highbrow talks on the theme of green. Before the ball had taken place, newspapers and magazines, encouraged in various ways by Bernays' office, had latched on to the idea that green was all the rage. Yes, it worked, and yes, Lucky sales continued to grow, but even this was not enough. Women continued to shun Luckies. So in 1942, the company saying that the copper it used to make a green label was needed for the war effort made a switch to a white label. The real reason may have been to sell to more women smokers, but with the tale of wartime sacrifice in place, the company ran ads saying, "Lucky Strike Green has gone to war." Bernays, it turns out, never smoked.